All right, I would like to first welcome everybody for coming today. I know that we have a large base at home, watching at home, so we'll be talking to them as well. I will start off first. My name is Holly Kimpon. First and foremost, I'm a parent in the district. We live here, and I have two kids, 5th grade and 9th grade that attend here. I'm also a teacher in the district. I teach biology and anatomy, and I'm the current Levy chairperson. So my goal today is to talk about some very common questions that people have. Why do we need a levy? Why are expenses so high? Things like that. I'm going to present a little bit tonight. I would love for this to be conversational though. So if I'm in the middle of something and you have a question, please raise your hand. I would be happy to, stop and we can talk about it. The people behind me are welcome to also interject if I'm, missing something as well. My goal is to just tell you why we're here, what we need, and be very open and transparent about everything, okay? For the people that are viewing at home, I think we'll probably hit those questions at the end. If you are viewing at home tonight, make sure you go to the website, genoaschools.com, and they will show you how to email a question in, and Mr. Baker will let us know if we have any of those questions. Okay? I will not be answering most of the questions tonight. That's what these guys are up here for, the ones that make the decisions. My goal, though, is to explain a little bit about some of the information that we've been putting out and why we are where we are. Okay, one last thing too. If you do ask a question, I know this is uncomfortable, but we would love for you to come down and use the microphone. That way people at home can hear the question as well. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can shout it out and then I'll just say it for the people at home. All right, so the biggest question, why do we need a levy? Why is it that we come back to you every 5-6 years and say we need more money, right? That is always the million-dollar question. And the reality is, it's because we are not receiving any more funding from the state. Just like you in your personal budget, expenses rise. They just rise. And our state is saying, even though you're having all of these increases, most of them you can't control, we're still not going to give you any more money than we did 20 years ago, essentially. I mean, it's raised a little bit here and there, but if you look back at our finances, which I have, they are not raising much. I'll just let you know, one of the reasons why I got so involved with the levy is I'm a taxpayer in this district, and I too, 10 years ago said, why do we keep needing a levy? The district must be mismanaging money. They must be doing something wrong. And I'll tell you, through everything that I've looked at, it's just not been the case, and that is why I offered to step up and kind of lead this thing, because I was skeptical too. The numbers up on the board show you the last year and our next 2 predicted years. Revenue-wise, it stays basically the same, but if you look at our expenses, they continue to rise. And last year, we were about $200,000 short and had to dip into our savings. That's another note too. We do have some in savings. It's pretty minor in the grand scheme of what school districts have. Rossford has $39 million in the bank right now. We have 4. And that's going to go away really, really quickly if we don't get a new source of funding. So we are up a creek, basically, with the way that our expenses are trending and our sources of income. The other question is, why can't we get more revenue? Why can't we find other places to get it? Our revenue comes in 3 places. About half of it comes from property taxes, which is the levies. The other half comes from state funding, and about 3.3% comes from our low risk investments like CDs and whatnot. So if the state's not going to give us more money, and we can't get a lot of money from our investments, the only other option we have is to ask the public again. And that's why we are here today. So what is causing our expenses to be so high? A lot of things, but our two biggest increases are special education and cost of living increases for our staff salaries and benefits. Just a side note that I thought was really eye-opening, our special education costs from 2015, which the last time we asked for a levy, to today have risen over $700,000. It's an 80-something% jump, which is really hard for a district like ours where we're, pinching pennies to come up with. Now, as a side note, that's not a bad thing. Every kid that we have in our district deserves every bit of education that they get. Some kids just cost a little bit more than others. And they need these services, they deserve these services, and they're required to get these services by law. So those are the types of things that we can't control in our budget, okay? As a side note, our federal funding for these increases, or for this, for special education costs, decreased by 5%. So while we're going up 80-something%, our funding is going down 5%. It's really hard. So that amount alone is about half of what we're asking annually with this levy. The other big expense to the district is our staff salaries. We're the biggest employer in the area. So we employ about 150 people, and we'll get little cost of living increases, but when you have 150 people, those little increases add up, especially over the years. So then the question comes in, are we overspending? Are we paying our staff too much? Are we spending more money than we need to on our students? And the answer is no. I was curious, so I looked up every single principal and superintendent in the 9 districts that are listed there. I looked up all their wages, and we came in 9th out of 9. I looked at every single teacher contract and looked at all of their starting salaries for every teacher. We're 8 out of 9. I went to Ohio Department of Education, looked up cost per student spending. We're 9 out of 9. And in fact, we're in the lowest 20% in the entire state. So are we overspending? I don't think so. The Genoa way is doing more with less, and it's getting really hard to do that. But the truth is, we're not overspending in areas that we can control. So if we can't control these big costs, what are we doing to cut in other areas? What are we doing to save money in the things we can control? I just had a small list up here. There's a lot of little things, a lot of nickel and dime things, but these were the bigger ones. Most people don't know that even though we're paid the lowest in the area, all staff, admins, teachers, support staff, all agreed to a pay freeze last year to save jobs and to save our district from going in the red. And we did that, and it was $140,000 roughly in savings last year. We share personnel with other districts to cut costs. That's about $50,000 a year. Our treasurer is really good at finding ways to save money on utilities, and when we have to pay services to other places, he's really good at finding grants and things like that. That has saved us about $80,000. Our superintendent, Mr. Ferguson, he agreed for a pretty small stipend to take on the big job of high school principal as well as superintendent. That saved about $100,000 for the district overall. Other things, your teachers are always working too, really hard. We are constantly writing grants to Kiwanis and bigger grants too. We were awarded 5,000 free books, $15,000 worth of books from our state union. We have a staff member that writes NASA grants and gets them. We brought $30,000 worth of STEM materials in. So there's a lot of little extras. And I didn't put them up here, but all of our parent organizations, the athletic boosters pay for all of the uniforms, all of the equipment. They pay for all of the upgrades to our facilities. Our PTO bought things like bleachers, right? They bought the bleachers in the elementary school. They bought all the playground equipment, amongst a million other things that they paid for in the elementary school. You look at like our music boosters who are helping with uniforms, and they're helping raise funds to, repair instruments and things like that. Our high school has a Genoa academic committee, this parent group that brings in things like the career fairs and offset costs like that. So everybody in this district is really doing their part to try to help where we can. The problem is it's expensive to run a school district, and there's only so much we can cut before we have to start making the big cuts to make up for what the state isn't giving us. Which leads me to what happens if the levy doesn't pass. You guys have a sheet, hopefully, that you grabbed. This is just same thing that's on there. I don't need to go through and read all this to you. I'm sure that you've seen this before. This will make up, you can correct me if I'm wrong, around 900,000, give or take. Ish. A little bit less than that. A little bit less, okay. So it's going to be, to get a lot of money, we have to cut a lot. We have to cut the expensive things. And the expensive things are staff, because that's about 80% of our budget. So, I get this question a lot on social media, why haven't they looked to cut other areas? And they have, just works, the staff is the expensive part of the budget. So when you are $1 million short, you have to cut $1 million worth of things out of your budget, and 80% of that's going to have to be your staff. So in terms of bus route eliminations, we're only required by law to bus students outside, K-8 students outside of 2 miles. So we would eliminate all the miles that are, or routes that are within those 2 miles. Elementary school day would be shortened a little bit to account for teacher planning. Teachers have their planning periods. It's required by state to give teachers planning time. And they do that when the kids are at their essential classes. So that's why that would have to be shortened to allow that time for the teachers. And we will be upping participation fees as well for athletics and music and things to kind of bring in a little bit more revenue to the district that way. All right, I'm done talking now. I hope that I didn't bore you too much and I gave you some good information. Like I said, I will now kind of switch into the role of the question taker, but they will provide the answers for you as well. So if anybody would like to come up and ask a question, or you can shout it out and I can repeat it for the people at home, you can do that.
I'd just like to add one thing.
Please.
I thought one of the interesting things about funding, like our youth, like there's so many questions on social media about sports, and Genoa spends so much on sports and all that. We just did a what was the refurbish on the track? What did that cost us? $65,000. $0 for taxpayer dollars. That will be funded through our athletic boosters. Are paying that $65,000. Mr. Ed, one of the finest music teachers in the nation. We have over 100 kids in the marching band right now.
We've got 85.
85. But we were over 100 what, a year ago?
Yes.
2 years ago? So over 100 at one point, we're bouncing. It's a big band. Each one of those uniforms is $650. $650 for a band uniform. First of all, I did not know that until I got on the school board, and I choked up a little bit when I thought, oh my gosh, let's really take care of these band uniforms. But $650 per band uniform. How much of the school budget was spent to purchase band uniforms? Bill?
Zero.
$0 was used to purchase over 100 band uniforms. That is not normal. How much did we spend on basketball uniforms?
Zero.
Volleyball uniforms?
Zero.
We can just keep going. Golf, it doesn't matter. You name the sport, we're spending $0 taxpayer dollars on these items. And I want to just put that out there because that is not normal. They buy uniforms at Perrysburg, at Rossburg. The boosters are not doing that. They're buying their band uniforms. This is not normal. It's not normal. We look amazing. We go to the field, we march in the band, we sing in the choir. We look amazing out there. Our FFA teachers in the room, and I can't tell you how impressed this bunch of FFA students are. That how do we support send them to get their national degrees? And is that through taxpayer dollars, or do we use
Our alumni.
the Alumni Association for the FFA? Allows these children to travel all over the United States to participate and represent this community at the highest level. And it's not paid for by the school system or our tax dollars. I just want to keep putting that out there. Like, what in the world, what school system has the PTO purchase bleachers for the gymnasium? Like, that's not a real thing, is it? And it is a real thing in this district. We didn't have the budget in our new school, our new elementary when we built it, to have bleachers in the gymnasium. And the PTO raised money with the carnival, which is like an army of moms and dads that come in and work for 6 months to run this carnival, and they'll raise $20,000. And that money is used for, so what do we spend on field trips? To send our kids, elementary kids on field trips.
Those are all, that's not general fund either.
So that's donated by the PTO, pays for the busing for the field
Depending on
trips.
where they go.
Yep.
That's 2,000 a year.
$0 taxpayer dollars. That is not normal. I just keep saying that. That is not normal. We pay, on average, and this is the great part is, we are a model district. If you are a conservative who believes that we should be fiscally sound, that we should, I mean, we are like, there should be politicians coming to study our district. How do we do so well with so little? They should be coming to study us. You know, the districts around us, one district is going to spend about $12 to $13 million to build an inside facility with turf. Other districts are turfing their football fields with ESSER's money. We just had an audit. The state came in and audited us about ESSER's money. So that's we'll call it COVID money, just to keep it simple. But so the COVID money that everybody talks to, we got $1.2 million. It sounds like a lot, doesn't it? That sounds like a lot of money. Some districts got $30 million. Just unbelievable amounts of money. Our treasurer would join calls and they would say, we don't know what to do with it. We don't know what to do. We have a problem. We're not sure where to spend it. Well, we just had our audit, and the auditors from the state told Mr. Nye, we're one of the first districts where we have no advice, no comments, no recommendations, no criticism of how we spent the money. The money is being used, $140,000, $120,000 is being used to upgrade the software and the HVAC system, which is it's just the cost of running a 20-year-old building in the middle school. We think of the middle school as being a new building, but when was that? It's
2001.
2001. We have to replace that. We get to use our ESSER's money to replace that. We have to use a certain percentage for getting our kids caught up from a really crazy epidemic year. We can use money for different teachers that are supplementing learning that was missed. But we're one of the few districts that we don't have extra. All we did was the in the red spending would have been $1.2 million higher than it is today. We used it to run our school system. That's really what we did. And I bring this stuff up because we look amazing. We do an amazing job with so little. And I'm so proud of the staff, I'm so proud of the administration when it comes to spending. Because when I joined the school board, and this is my, I think, 6th year on the school board, I came in like, we're gonna cut, we're gonna find money we're wasting, we're gonna do that. And guess what? We found stuff. There are stuff we found that we were wasting. But it isn't in any, and that's what, there's so much you can learn when you get on the school board. Like, I didn't know what shared spending was, but basically you get Woodmore to hire and pay the benefits, and then you just pay part of their salary, and then they come work for us for half the time, and they work for Woodmore for half the time. We do more shared services than most districts anywhere. A lot of the people that are in it, it's great. It's how the state should run. And when you call the governor, and I called the governor, I've been to DC, I've met with Bob Latta, I've met with Portman, I've met with all of our DJ and Teresa, I've met with all of them, and they all give you the same suggestions: shared services, shared services, shared services. We share, anybody want to share a service, we'll share a service. We will do that. That means we don't have to have the employee, we share that work, and it saves us money. We've done more of these. How many do we have right now? 6? 4? 4 shared services currently. We use North Point versus hiring employees in many cases as well to save dollars. We've really, really pushed the needle where we can, and we will continue to do that. When we passed the levy in 2015, we had an influx of money. We did not add massive amounts of staff. We did not, like, one of the really big spends we did was we gave a stipend so a teacher could run a student council in our elementary school. Like that, these are the ads that we made. There's districts that have 7 times the number of aides in classrooms that we have. So when you think about the teachers' numbers, the teachers are the 8th lowest paid in the 9 districts that were shared. They also have, compared to like in Oak Harbor, about 1 aide for every 7 aides, 6, 7 aides in that district. Think about that. So they have less help and they're paid less. So why do they do it? Because they love this community, they live here, they're from here, they're alumni. We hire some great alumni here, and they stick it out and they give us the Genoa discount, right? Our admins, administrators, they give us the Genoa discount. They just do because they want to. But the reality is, and this is some numbers I got today in the finance meeting. We have a middle school VP. We don't have a vice principal for the middle school, high school anymore. We haven't filled that. We're not backfilling it. Our principal, who left us at the beginning of the year, so this is 2 administrators that have left us. When he left, we did not backfill. We got our superintendent to step in and cover that job. We have a bus mechanic that we did not backfill. We have a custodian in the high school that we did not backfill. We have 3 bus driver positions that we have not backfilled. We have 2 dishwashers that we have not backfilled. We have a cashier that we did not backfill. We went half a year without a middle school counselor. That's a really bad idea. And probably that, it's financial decisions. We made tough ones. We backfilled that because you can't. There's some things you can't do. You gotta do it. Yeah, absolutely. So, siblings. 140,000 in pay freezes. That was volunteers. So the teachers, the administrators volunteered to not get an increase that saved us $140,000. So 2 years ago we were doing parades, thanking our teachers, sending love, saying how great they were heroes, right? They're heroes in this district. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for taking and making that sacrifice to make this district as good as it can be. So I just wanted to hit some of those things that I've seen on social media. You know, on average, we pay about $600 more on a $100,000 house than a homeowner in Danbury. I'll give you this stat. This stat blows my mind. So we pay $600 more than if you live out on the lake out in Danbury. If you don't know where that is, it's over by the islands, Puddin Bay and Kelly's. And their students receive almost double the funding per pupil for only one reason. Their property is worth a whole heck of a lot out there. Their business property is worth a whole heck of a lot out there. And we don't have high property values here. So we tax higher, but we're not seeing, like, the reward or the benefit to this district is very minimal. And it's just the truth. And I am doing everything I can. I know this district is, the administration, the board, like, politicians do not like speaking to anybody in front of you right now. They don't want, like, they used to take my call. It's really hard. I have to catch them at events where they're at now. They don't want to talk to me. They don't want to talk to Keith. They don't want to talk to Bill. They don't want to talk to Mike. They complain about us now because we're always negative. That's what they say. But, you know, 20-some years ago, we said the funding was unconstitutional, and it's the distribution of funds. That's what was found to be unconstitutional. They haven't fixed it in 20-some years, and that is the problem our district has. That is the creation of the problem, and we are a district, even the fair funding, this is really interesting. We're not poor enough. So most districts that are very poor or have low funding, the federal government will step in because they'll give you more funds. The federal government doesn't do that because we as a community make too much money. But because we don't have business properties, so most communities that have good incomes or high average incomes have high property values and high business properties. We don't. The businesses aren't here. The highest employers at school, and when that's the case, that's the situation we're in. So just wanted to share a few things. That was a lot. I'll get off.
All right. Do we have any questions from home? No? Okay.
I have a question, so I can go on the record.
Please, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
And actually, Mr. Nye, this is probably for you. Could you please explain, because this has come to me many times, so if our PTO, our athletic boosters, have so much money, why can't we use some of that money to supplement our teachers? You know my answer.
Well, that's. Yeah, those are all private entities. We're a public district, and that's, I can't say that it's illegal, but it's, I know for a fact that athletic boosters cannot pay for a football coach and stuff like that, so I know that that's not legal. So that's basically, but aside from that, you're doing so many other things that do benefit our district in different ways. So, I mean, even though you aren't doing that, there's so many other things that you are doing to help the district.
I think another important part to that too, when a school district's treasurer sets a budget, it can't be, you can't include things like that, donations and private things, because it's not guaranteed funding. State funding is guaranteed, and I mean, in terms of when you set your budget. So, unfortunately, those types of things go towards extras because they're not funding that is counted on long-term, I think is maybe another way to explain it.
I wouldn't even call them extras, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And one of the things is, like with the boosters and stuff, somebody's giving money, they're giving it for a certain thing. So
Right.
if you're saying, hey, I'm donating $1,000 to the band, they don't want to go into teacher's salaries. So you're giving it to a specific cause or
And I think
You are correct.
That has been my answer to people that have approached me regarding that question.
I think the other, just to piggyback off what Keith said, is that people join those organizations because they believe in what that organization is doing. They believe it, they see it as a need. That's something they want to be part of. You know, when you talk about, just what you talked about, they didn't sign up to be an athletic booster to supplement teacher salaries. They didn't sign up to be a PTO to pay for benefits for, that's not what they're signing. They see what those organizations have done over the years, and they want to be part of that.
And no matter what it is here, whether it's the wrestling club, athletic boosters, band boosters, FFA alumni, I mean, that drives all those programs. So it's a dedicated group of people that believe in that cause, and they give their time, they give their dollars, and that allows the kids to do a lot of stuff that, unfortunately, we would not be able to offer through our budget.
Are there any other questions from the public here, or Mr. Baker, anything coming in?
We have 85 people watching,
Okay,
but
great.
nobody commenting.
Please come on up.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I'm new to the community. My husband and I moved here from upstate New York, near Rochester. And I have to say, and I'm addressing mainly those negative Nellies out there, we used to live in Ohio 15 years ago. And we lived in a district, and I put this out on Facebook, where we didn't pass our levy. We've lived in 4 different districts. Our kids have attended 4 different districts in Ohio since we lived here. We lost after multiple tries. And when the state comes in and takes you over, your life goes down the tubes. And what you lost, you have to struggle to even hope to get it back. It's not a game. It's not a threat. It's real. We donated paper. We donated a DVD player. We lived in Bristolville. We're much smaller than Genoa was. Now, I hear people, I understand. I don't like pay taxes. Taxes suck. That's the reality of life, death and taxes. But if you want a good district, that's what you do. Now, I get it. I don't have kids in the district anymore. My kids are grown, and they're out. I have one who teaches for one of those 4 districts, Lorraine City Schools. She sees it every day because they're under state control. And they have worked for 7 years, she's a music teacher, to get back what they lost. And they still don't have it all back. So while I don't like to pay any more taxes than the next guy, if you don't want to lose your programming, you gotta do it. I get it. I guess in some ways I chuckle. Here, your property taxes and your school taxes are one thing. Where we just moved from, we graduated about 320. Nice auditorium for a little district, I'm impressed. Because we came from a slightly bigger district. Our school taxes, on the same size house I own now, $4,600. That's not my property taxes. That's just school. So while I hear some people on Facebook groaning about what they're paying, I also don't hear them thinking clearly about how much is being done here. We got here, we did our due diligence. We looked, how are you spending your money? All those things. There is a sign in my yard for this levy, and I don't have kids here. Because ultimately, my property values and everybody in this community benefit in the long run from having a strong school district. Eventually, Genoa will be more of a bedroom community to Toledo. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it will be. Pickerington, which is one of our districts that I lived in, was tiny. We have like 4 high schools now. Because Columbus took them over. They just spread. Genoa one day will be there, but they're not there yet. So those who are sitting at home and all those people who are saying, no, 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 remember, you lose. Ultimately, you lose if you don't keep your school district strong, period.
Thank you so much for your time. They couldn't email the email that you're supposed to?
They couldn't get into the link that was posted to the meeting, and now they're watching on YouTube. But
They
they
can
can't
text
copy.
me, just give my phone number.
All right, if anybody, I'll do my email. If anybody at home has a question and for some reason you're not able to get it to somebody, you can email me, HS, as in science, Kimpon, KIMPON, @gmail.com. hskimpon@gmail.com. Feel free. I believe somebody else was looking at anything on Facebook. No, okay.
Sarah, did they give you the questions?
No,
They
they
just
said
told
that they
you.
weren't able to comment, but they couldn't get it. I had 4 different people, I'm in a group chat, but they couldn't get it.
I think the comments on YouTube are turned off, that on purpose. So that's maybe it. They were supposed to email what was on our website.
Yeah, it's boardmeeting@genoaschools.com.
Boardmeeting@genoaschools.com is where they're supposed to go.
So they can email board
Email
meeting
question, yeah.
at genoaschools.com. One question I got from my brother-in-law and his 2 brothers was, so I looked up my taxes and $2,000 of my real estate tax goes to Genoa Schools. My other brother's paying the same, and my 3rd brother's paying about $3,000 every year to Genoa Schools. What are you doing with all that money? Who's managing it? Well, it's Bill and I, mostly. But I did some math for him, and I thought it was helpful. So if we're spending about $9,000 per pupil, which is the lowest in the bottom 20% of the state. So we do it cheaper than anybody, so $9,000. So for 13 years, kindergarten through high school, that's $117,000. If my brother-in-law pays the $2,000 for 50 years, that's $100,000. So in 50 years, my brother-in-law didn't pay for his own education. Like, let that settle in. Like, that's why public education is funded across the public. That's the point of it. That's the reason it's done. Because it shares the burden. But I think we're a much better country because we're an educated country. And everyone has that opportunity. So you think about that, 117,000, how many kids do you have? 2. How many were educated in Genoa? Just start doing the math. You can pay your property tax for a really long time and still not cover your own cost for your own education. It's just kind of a unique way to look at it.
All right. Yes, sir, please, come on up.
I just want to comment on the board, and I think they do a great job. And I was going to comment on something I saw, again, on social media. And I've said this story before, but my father was a realtor, and we moved out of a city who had a failing school to come to this community because they had a strong school. And at the time, Lake had a failed levy, and the story was it takes, as the couple from New York said, it's a 7 to 10 year process to get these things back. They cut, I think, athletics in Lake, and it took them forever to recover from that. And I think the reality is if we lose teachers and bus drivers and services and things like that, I mean, literally, this school will not be the same for a long time. It's going to be hard when we don't pay these people the same as other schools in our district. Why would they come back to Genoa? I mean, if we don't take care of them now, again, this could be our last chance to keep what we got is good, to keep it good. One thing that I did see that I want to comment on was watching on Facebook. And again, I was always taught two things. You always support your school, that's your community. And then you always support your library. That's a great cause, everybody benefits from it. And then I'll quote, somebody said, quote, "That's the dumbest shit ever." And I thought, why do they say that? This is someone I respect things they say, but I thought, maybe that is a blanket thing to say, I always support it. I don't think that is a good thing to always support it. You could have a board who's not doing what you're doing. And if maybe things were out of control, I could see the argument, but that is not the situation here. And I think my question would be, when you have little arguments about little things that people think you could do better, I think in a nutshell, when you say cost per student, that's every single cost. Isn't that everything? I mean, that's your bus and your gas and your teachers. That's every single expense that it takes to run the school, and we're the lowest per student. So you can't really argue, if we're the lowest across the board in paying all these fees, that you guys haven't done what we're asking our board to do. So to me, I think it's easy to say, I think this is an opportunity for us as a community to show ourselves that we're resilient and we can handle this and keep a good thing going. So I just, again, thank the board and praying this goes through because we really need it. I mean, people pay for us, and I think it's, you know, it's our turn. So.
Thank you, Mr. Kagreis. You have one other comment?
Hi, I'm Mallory, and I'm talking on behalf of the Talk of Genoa. Sorry. Okay, if the levy passes, will we be levy issue free for a couple of years?
I mean, financially, this is always going to be a cycle. But yes, you should be another 5, 6, 7 years. And that depends on if the state ever gets things straightened out there. It could be certainly longer. But the reality of it is 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, like, you may see a renewal, like, but we wouldn't be putting new money up. And we're still not going to have, we're not going to massively change the number of aides in our school system. We're not going to increase the number of teachers in any large scale. We're not going to be adding massive number of new administrators. We're not going to be adding new spending. There are some things that we're lacking. We really feel that like our gifted program, we are required by the state to identify gifted students, but we don't do anything once we identify them outside of what the classroom teachers do on their own. That's crazy, but we don't do it because we don't offer AP classes because we can't afford it. So we're not going to be adding big extravagant expenditures. We won't be turfing the football field. We won't be doing any of those crazy things anytime. It's not going to happen. That's not how we're going to run. We'll stay efficient and keep running the school system as efficiently as possible.
Why has the reason for the levy changed each time it is on the ballot? Again, I don't know if this is true, but these are the questions I'm getting off
I'm curious what reasons. I mean, it says pretty broad.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the reasons.
I can jump in a little bit. I think somebody had once said, it was the fees part. We added the fees and then we took the fees off. I think that was something that was said that I read before.
I'll say this, the school board personally felt that school fees are a detriment to participation, especially when it's advanced courses and athletics and music, and that poor children, poor families in the district could be disinclined to participate. That's why it was our belief that we shouldn't have those. The community was loud and clear that school fees, they felt school fees they paid them and that we should continue to pay them. So that's why we reversed. It was our personal opinion, our personal choice to remove them with the initial levy ask, and the school fees were a very small portion. It's, what do we collect in school fees, and
100,000 for the school fees, about 50,000 for the pay participate fees, so.
So-
total 150.
Like a half of a mil or
yeah,
something,
it's,
isn't it?
it's about a half mil of the total
A little
ask.
bit more than
But
that.
don't we have the highest, like, fees around here? I'm pretty sure.
We're high. I don't know that I have the number. We have pretty high fees, and they were initiated because of cost cutting in the past, and we've never removed them because we frankly are so thin. So, but it was a very small part of the initial ask, but we put that back in because of the initial ask. It was just clear that the community disagreed with the board. We heard you loud and clear, and we removed it. So that was more a reaction. I still believe they're a terrible idea, school fees, but I voted to remain with school fees. So
I think if you look back at any of the literature that we've put out over the past year regarding the levy, it's always said to maintain operating fees, That's really the gist of what the levy was asking for. That was just a tiny piece on whatever levy that was taken off. So it's remained the same reason the whole time.
Okay, now this is the question for me. If the levy does not pass, you're planning on cutting 3 routes, is that what it said? Now, is that
Three drivers? Three drivers.
How if we only have like 6 drivers to begin with? How are we
No,
gonna?
we have more drivers than we have. At the current time, we have 10 drivers. We have 11 drivers currently. We're down 3 from the start of the year, 3 that we have been able to replace. So with cutting busing within 2 miles for K-8 and no high school busing, we can allow us to drop 1 bus driver and cover those routes. So we're not saving a huge, but we wouldn't be replacing those other 3 that we currently don't have.
I mean, these drivers are so overrun already, they are so burnt out, and they do not get as much credit as they deserve. I mean,
I agree with you.
Totally agree.
yeah, plus, isn't, like, the bus driver salary is less than any other district in the area, correct?
I don't think we have that exact data. We are once again, one of the lower salaries, yes, we are.
Okay. Now, I wish these people would come to the meeting, so I can stand up here.
Me too.
Jesus. If the levy fails, how will the district overcome that? Are there other requests or needs if the levy fails?
How do we overcome we have the cuts that are on board, the things that we will have to live with, and, we'll live with them. They won't be pretty, but we will live with those. And going forward, if it fails, there may have to be other cuts. I mean, it's just, at some point, we have to pay our bills, we have to educate our kids, but we need the money to do that. You keep cutting staff, again, because that's 80% of our budget, you keep cutting staff, you're going to end up cutting more services to kids. Classroom sizes are going to get larger, there's going to be fewer offerings across the board. A lot of the extras that we talk about, at some point we would have to cut those.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at our list, Mike, obviously, elementary phys ed, and then the district librarian, it's going to be part of the cut, so if it doesn't fail, then we go down the list, and that may be not enough, then we can miss more cuts.
And at some point, the state will come in and take us over, kind of like what she was talking about with Lorraine. And then we don't have a choice, any choices really, of what we would like to have for staffing, for anything really. So that would be one of the upcoming, if we continue to go down the road we are.
And the state's like a one-size-fits-all. They don't care about a district's needs, whatever they decide is what happens, and you live with it for a decade, right? Yeah.
That's exactly right. You have this, the school board becomes basically defunct,
Yeah.
And the state says, go, and you ask how far. And that's exactly.
There's
how
zero
it
say,
is.
it takes all the local
Yep.
decisions out of it. And whether you're a big district, a little district, they just apply the same rules, yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. There's about 4 districts currently in Ohio that are experiencing that, and they haven't been pulled out of it for 7, 8 years at least. So, yeah. There was a question from, I'm sorry, were you finished? You probably have more.
I'm trying to figure out how to word this,
Okay,
but so you can go on.
okay. There's a question at home, go ahead, Mr. Baker.
Oh, yeah, Leslie Irwin asked if we have any sense of the chance of the levy passing with increased voter turnout.
I think voter turnout is huge. We've had a lot of supporters come out in previous elections, mostly big elections. So if you are a supporter at home, every vote counts for sure, and we need everybody to get to the polls for sure.
I wanted to piggyback too on that last comment about what would happen if the levy did fail. And I think the other thing that would happen was there would be no new programs. So we'd have no money to do anything. So we wouldn't be able to adapt to any new issue, any new challenge. We're continually facing new issues. Heck, who predicted a worldwide pandemic, and we survived that. So I think that's another consideration to remember.
Okay, Joanne. Considering that state funding did increase in the last state budget and also the formula was changed for the first time since, Joel, you should have been here for all these numbers. How much more do you expect from the state specifically?
I can answer that.
Go ahead.
We're actually just getting about $85,000 additional annually,
As
which
opposed
is
to-
essentially a teacher. That's what we're receiving from this fair school funding plan.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that. So, like all things in school funding in Ohio, what district you live in determines how fair funding impacted you. Fair funding in some districts solved the problem. I'm going to be super clear. It did solve the problem. It did almost nothing here because we're an anomaly. We have an income base that is higher than the average. We have a property base that is extremely low. So the way the formula worked, it just like what we have doesn't exist elsewhere. Most places that have high income have high property. We don't have that. And the fair funding system fixed a lot of districts. It did. It fixed a ton of district problems. And there's a lot of winners. There's a ton of winners out there. And the reason we're not is it's an equation. It's a math equation, an algorithm to figure out how it's supposed to work. It fixed a bunch of districts. It did almost $85,000 on a $13 million budget. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't make major impacts to our deficit trend. And a simple thing, like this is an interesting thing we've got to think about. So what's the family plan cost for one of our employees, healthcare?
$24,000.
$24,000 total. So if we hire a bus driver and they decide to go on the family plan, that's an additional $24,000. If they don't, it's $24,000 we're not spending. So imagine we hire 2 new bus drivers, both of them take it, that's half of the increase like that, because 2 families are taking our insurance. Uncontrollable, we can't forecast that, but these are the little things. I think we had more state funding in 2006. I've used this if you've ever come to a board meeting, and most of you haven't, but since 2006 we got more from the state than we do today. In 2006 we got more from the state than we do today. A bus in 2006 was about $46,000. A bus today is about $90,000. And we got more funding in 2006 than we do today. So the formula worked in in certain districts. And the Perrysburg superintendent was a big part of the fair funding team that helped push that over the finish line. And Mike knows him well, works with him, and he said, hey, look at us, like, why isn't this, what's wrong in here? And he just looked at it, it's just like, it's just, you're an anomaly. It doesn't impact you in any positive way, so.
Great. Now, I have a question kind of for the teachers, a lot of teachers in here. If this levy does not pass, is there anything that we can do as parents to help you guys?
I mean, a lot of us are gonna lose jobs, so that can't be helped. I think, you know, part of the problem is we come here knowing that we're not gonna get paid well, and that's okay, because we've always loved Genoa. I think the current public attacks on teachers are hard to swallow a lot of times, because we're really trying to be the best for our kids. And if you see some of that public bashing, if you could step in and say, hey, they're great, that would be helpful, because all we hear is the negative, and we don't really hear much of the positive. And so it makes it hard for a lot of teachers to drive into a place like Genoa, because there's not a lot of places to live here, so you have a lot of teachers that have to drive in and keep showing up and doing what we love when you don't feel respected. So we would just love other advocates out there that are local.
Well, I'm a mod at the top of Genoa, so if you see any of that, message me and I'll just delete it. And sometimes I do not see it. Sometimes we do not see it.
Sure, I understand.
So if...
It's hard. There's a lot of negativity out there. It's hard to keep track of all of it.
I know. And I do have another question. When is the next board meeting? Because, when? Tomorrow. All right, well, tomorrow night, for people who want to touch on the bullying at the junior high. All right.
Awesome.
That's all
Thank
from
you
the
so
top
much.
of Genoa.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Yes, sir.
If the board requires the state would take over, would they raise taxes possibly?
I'm not sure. I
They
don't think they can, right?
They don't have the latitude to do that, it has to be voter approved.
We would have to come up with a plan. When I first got here, there have been times when we had to come up with a plan and submit that to the state. That will actually be the first step. If you look at a 5-year forecast, and right now we have basically this year and then 2 other years of black, being in the black. And if that ever goes down to the current year, just 1 year, then that's when the state will come knocking on the door and ask for a letter stating, okay, how are you going to change this? So that's the first step. Then the next step would be them coming in and just essentially slashing things, because, like Mr. Ferguson said, they don't have the latitude to do, put something onto the community like that.
I believe we have another question at home,
Yes,
Mr. Baker.
that was very good timing, Mr. Nye, because Sherry Zawalski online asks, assuming the levy doesn't pass, what is the timeline for state intervention? What is the tipping point for financials that will drive that action? I think you just addressed it, but if you could elaborate a little more, that'd be good.
Yeah, just like I said, current year, and we have 2 more years in the black. Once that turns to current year and a single year in the black, we'll get the first discussions with the state.
So what year would that be?
Well, right now, fiscal year 22 is in the black, or for 23 and 24. Yeah, if I do a 5-year forecast in May and November, if the next ones would turn worse, potentially that could happen.
Another question?
I just got a quick point. So, a lot of us view a school system as separate, but I don't know that you realize how intertwined we are with the community. So there's the community, it's the village of Genoa, it's the Chamber of Commerce. They're all working together. It's all connected. So if one doesn't do well, the whole ship sinks. So, I mean, We've got some great supporters from the mayor. The mayor's been doing a wonderful job. He actually came to a board meeting, talked about some new initiatives. Bill is a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and he comes to the board meetings. So it's a group effort.
I'm going to circle back a little bit, Bill, to that question about the state takeover and things like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we avoided this by 1 year by the teachers taking the freeze and by being able to use the COVID funds strategically, right? We were able to offset some of our deficit spending.
Yes, that's certainly impacting the positive nature of our situation at this point. Obviously, it's a Band-Aid,
Correct.
but yes, that is correct.
And then another question that I was just texted, when would we actually receive these funds from this levy?
Those would be coming up to be after January 1, which we get March, April.
Okay,
The first semblance of the money coming in at that point.
okay, great. Another question?
All right, have they looked
To an income-based,
is this, can you hear me?
Yes.
have they looked into
To an income-based tax just for the school? I guess Gibsonburg went through this and they've had success ever since.
Yeah, we are considering it. We've considered it. They've attempted to pass income tax levies in the past in the community, and they failed by large margins. So I was a proponent of income tax because one thing that people don't understand, when you pass a levy, we can pass a levy at 5 mils. And let's say that millage brings in, what would 5 mils bring in? $1 million. Property taxes increase. Property values increase. We still, when we renew it, we'll renew it at less than 5 mils. The renewal would be like 3.9 mils and maintain only that $1 million. You don't get property value increases on millage for schools. The state house passed this, the governor signed it years ago. By doing that, it forces Genoas of the world continue to have to come back and come back and come back and come back. Had they not passed that, you'd probably see us every 11 years. But because they did pass it, 5 mil levies that we passed 20 years ago are now 1.8 mil levies. Like, they just continue to reduce and reduce and reduce. Income tax is great because it's your income. If your income goes up, the collection goes up. But this community has said no in the past in pretty large margins, and that's why we didn't go that direction. But yes, we did consider that, and not that we wouldn't consider it in the future.
Yes, we have another online question from Jennifer Reynolds. Why can't the school just charge more per kid to go to school? $100 school fee is so low compared to other schools. Why can't we do this?
Don't we have the highest school fees though in the area?
I don't know. We'll find that out. We'll get a comparison. It's a public school. It's a public school. That's why. I mean, it's not a private school. It's not there's private school options.
every child has a right to a free, appropriate public education.
Yeah, it's a public right. That's why we don't, and that's frankly why I disagree with school fees. I do. Always will, but like I said, I will pass the raise school fees, because I believe governing, being elected to a board is to be responsive to your community, and I'm responding that way. So, but yeah, it's a public school, and you're not going to charge $1,000 for public schools. That's
Yeah, I just want to thank you guys for doing this. I'm really disappointed in the community who complained so badly about the board not listening and like the higher ups not listening to what they have to say, and nobody's here. I'm just truly disappointed in the community for not showing up to create a conversation that needs to be had. So I just want to thank all of you guys for doing this. See, I'm for the levy, but
All right, thank you so much. Can I have another comment?
Hi, I'm Megan O'Brien, and I'm actually the president of the Genoa Area Chamber of Commerce, and not a lifelong Genoan. I've lived here for about 13 years, and one of the things that has just really impressed me about this community is that when times are tough, people come together and support each other in phenomenal ways, and it is just so impressive. And when I sit in these Chamber of Commerce meetings, I'm excited. And I feel revitalized by all of the wonderful ideas and people in this community who care. And I've also seen that as a Genoa Comet mom of 2 high school kids. I have seen time and time again how the teachers and the staff in this school system care and over again go above and beyond for this community. But the thing that concerns me is that I have already seen a lack of confidence and fear in my children's classrooms. Just within the last 2 months, both of my children have lost teachers mid-year, and I have to believe that that's because of levy fear. We have a lot of exciting things, and truly we've talked tonight about the bright future of this community. But that future is not going to be bright if we don't stand up and come again in a tough time for this community and vote for this levy to pass. It really is a crucial time, and I really do hope that this community takes this need seriously and really pulls together, whether or not you have kids that are currently part of this district or not. It's truly important for all of us to work together so that we can have a vital and vibrant community.
Thank you so much. All right, oh, you have another?
Yeah, I emailed you.
Oh, you did, sorry.
No, that's okay. I guess we'll do this, we'll kind of tag team this because it's quite a lot. We'll go one question at a time, and this is from, and I apologize for messing up your name, Amy Petrowski. First question, are we searching for a more equitable means of funding public education?
Well, I think that I'll just address that. The public funding of education is dictated by the legislature. They determine the formula, they've worked on those things, and they determine how much we're going to get, each district by that formula is going to get. The best that we can do, and we've done this, is engage our legislators and telling them, expressing to them our difficulties, our challenges, and we do that on a regular basis. And Mr. Trainer has said, we may talk about his efforts. I've been down in Columbus, I've had multiple conversations. I'm engaged with people that have been part of the process. So we don't have an alternative source. Our source is what the state dictates. The state gives us an amount of money, a percentage, and they say, guess what, it's up to you to find the rest.
I actually come from the Kentucky school system is where I have my education from, and the alternative there was the state of the education system sued the state of Kentucky to redo education. That's how I got that. So I mean, truly
That kind of lines up with the second question from Amy, which is actually the third. I'll jump to the third one. No, more of a comment. She comments and says that we should sue the state a lot.
Yeah, I would like to pass a referendum from our school board, our little old school board, asking for sufficient funds to run the school system. We do not have a spending problem. We have a funding problem, and I believe this community pays their fair share, and I believe they should receive their fair share, and we are not receiving our fair share. I will say, somebody asked what parents could do to support their teachers. Be a pain in the butt of our elected officials. I talk to them, there's more concern about things like CRT, critical race theory, than there is funding the school system. We don't teach critical race theory. I don't know a district around us that teaches it, nor will ever teach it. It isn't a thing, but they are spending massive amounts of time to make sure we never teach something we're not going to teach, versus finding a solution to roofing our building, busing our children, paying our teachers. And if you ask, one of the questions I asked Holly a couple of years back when West Virginia teachers took over their state house and they got teacher raises across the board and all that, and I'm like, why aren't we doing that? Well, I'll tell you why we're not doing it, because there are some really highly paid teachers in this state at highly funded districts that have Amazons and have all these commercial facilities in their district, that they're not motivated, they're not fired up because they're well paid and they're well staffed and they're well supported. It is a have and have not state. The funding is unconstitutional on the distribution of funds. I don't believe the state has a funding problem. I believe the pie is plenty big enough. I'm not advocating that there's more taxes spent. I'm saying, I think we should send a calculator to every senator and representative in the state. Or we could just have Mr. D'Amelio's son's 8th grade math class do the math for them, because they could divide the funds in a more fair and equitable manner in probably an afternoon than the state's been able to do in 22 years. So that's what you could do as a citizen in this community, whether you believe we should pass the levy or not, is get loud with those state representatives, because they don't have, there's not a lot of competition in this county. We're going to probably have the same people winning, and there's no pressure on them to do anything, even though it's district after district. And even within our county, there are really big haves. There are districts receiving double the per pupil spending than we receive here. That's just a fact.
And this is a good example tonight of what happens statewide. You get behind your keyboard, and it's great to moan and complain, expletive deleted, and not show up at the polls, and that's what happens when we elect our state representatives. We don't show up, but we're really content to complain about it when they don't do their jobs. If you're not happy with it, and we lived here 20 years ago when all this went down, get out and vote. It's real simple. If you don't like who's doing the job for you, and we pay them. We pay them. They work for us. So, Genoa, State of Ohio, start making them do their doggone jobs.
The next question from Ms. Petrowski is, how should people who can't afford a tax increase put food on the table and pay their bills if this increases?
Two things are true. Two things can be true at the same time, and I don't have a good answer for that. I will tell you, times can be hard for a lot of people in the community, that the system isn't fair, but this is the only system we have to operate in. I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer to that individual. That I get it. I understand, and I expect you to vote no if you can't afford for it. I don't have a problem. But the other thing that can be true at exactly the same time is we're underfunded and massively efficient. We do not waste dollars here. And yes, you can drive around and you can pick something out and send it to me, and we'll address it. We'll look at it. Somebody said we had the lights on too late at night. Well, we clean. We clean at night. So, but we'll do our part. We'll reduce. We'll do whatever we can to reduce spending. But two things can be true. You can be overtaxed. $600 more than a house in Danbury, and we can still not have a choice.
All right, and her last question is, are we going to have another levy in 6 months if this fails?
Yes, actually, the state requires it.
yes, it's very possible there will be another levy if this one fails.
It's not gonna go away. It doesn't go away,
Then the last question we had online, as of this point, Mr. Kevin Bushman wanted to know if our treasurer could also teach science. He sent it in, I had to say it.
You probably won't want that to happen.
We have another question here. Go ahead, sir.
All right, so I'm Brian Beard. I have 2 daughters in the school district. One question that I have, so back in 2014, where were we at per cost per pupil in 2014? Do you remember that, Bill? I want to say we were in the same sort of ballpark, if I'm not mistaken. It's something that, just to be able to compare.
I would say we were, I mean, everything.
Everything went up, but I thought we were still on the low end.
Yeah,
We were,
about
so
6,500 or something to that effect when we were still in the lower 20th percentile.
So a little bit of a testament to the time we've been able to still maintain that lower cost per pupil, even reflecting back to 2014.
Yeah,
That's
that's
a lot of diligence done by the administration to make that happen.
One of the interesting things is 70% of what we spend, and this was from a study done in the Ohio school system, 70% is spent in the classrooms. 70% of everything is spent in the classroom. That's insane. I mean, that is super efficient. Because that's not electricity, that's not your building, your facilities. 70% of our dollars are spent in the classroom. That's one of the best in the country, not just the state. So we're efficient. We're extremely efficient.
Any other questions at all from the room or online? No? Okay. I'm gonna switch, because this one's working a little better. We'll just, anything from the board at all before we finish up here? I would love to thank everybody for coming. If my projector warms up here, for those of you that are curious, voting has begun, and there are extended hours at the board. There are extended hours at the Board of Elections that you are able to go and vote in person. We strongly encourage you to get in early and vote. That way your vote counts, and if you're sick or stuck at work or something like that, and you miss May 3rd, we need all the support we can get. So that's just my own PSA for that, and there's some hours up there. All right? All right, any other questions? If not, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you would like a levy sign, there are some out in the front that you're able to grab, and feel free to stick around and ask any questions one-on-one if you would like as well. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good night.